Hey, y'all, welcome back to Right at the Wire. Well, we finally reached the end, and now it's time to put together our final assessment based upon our elements of handicapping, form, class, speed, and pace to determine who the real contenders are for the Belmont. So let's take a look. Part 5 is the final assessment. We look to see whom of the contenders meet the guidelines for selection from our four corners of handicapping analysis. Number 1 is Tapit shoes. We see form-wise, he got a B+ because he came off a nice effort in the Bathhouse Row. Class grade, pedigree-wise, he certainly stacks up, and I don't think that's a problem. Although he hasn't run in a graded stakes yet, and that's why we downgraded him. Speed-wise, he ran a number that's a little bit below what would be required to win the Belmont. So I think he's a cut below, and that's why he gets a B. And then pace, we saw that, running up near the engine, he didn't seem to have a lot in the tank left. So he gets a C+. And so overall, you'd say that, underneath is probably the best possible for this horse, but more than likely, I think he's a toss. I don't think he's going to factor in this race, maybe as a pace presence. Tapit Trice. Form grade is a C only because the Derby was just so appalling. It was just not even close to what this horse can do. We expect him to rebound. So maybe we can even change that to a C+, but it's only based upon the Derby. He's going to bounce back. Class grade, he couldn't have any better a pedigree for the Belmont being by Tapit. So, and he's run a graded stakes level and he's performed very well, particularly the Bluegrass. So he gets an A there. Speed grade, he's a B+ only because that last effort was a little disappointing, and but we know he can run a lot better. And as I mentioned, B+ means there's room for improvement, but he can deliver that. He has before, and as I believe he can in the Belmont. Pace grade is a C only because the Derby pace was so bad. As we also we revisited his Bluegrass Stakes pace. And if you run something more commensurate with that, then that will put him in the mix here. So again, a couple of these numbers are skewed a little bit based upon his last race and probably not an accurate reflection. Tapit Trice is a definite win candidate and a must-use in this race. Arcangelo is one of our new shooters, and form-wise he gets a B, mainly because the Peter Pan was around one turn, and he this is a two-turn race, and it's a big step up to a graded stake, grade 1 stakes at this level, particularly around 2 turns at 1.5 miles. Class-wise, he's got the pedigree. You see his third dam is better than honor, and he's got 2 Belmont Stakes winners in recent versions of his pedigree. So not going to be a problem. I don't think the 1.5 miles will be. So he gets an A- only because, again, 2 turns. Graded stakes hasn't done that yet. Speed grade, he gets a B+. He ran a 97, which is a number that's commensurate with some of the better runners in here, and I think is a number that's pretty close to winning the Belmont. He would need to move forward. There's where the rubber meets the road with this one. His patterns suggest he probably isn't going to move forward because he's been growing by leaps and bounds, and he's been improving very rapidly, and that usually is a recipe for disaster, and not just have a feeling he's not going to factor in that regard. Pace grade is a B+. If he ran the pace of the Peter Pan, if he could do that around 2 turns at 1.5 miles, that would make him a winning candidate for the Belmont. Just don't think it's going to happen. So there's mixed results with Arcangelo. If at his very best, I think he can get maybe underneath 3rd or 4th, but I really don't think he's going to factor in this race, and I'm not going to use. National Treasure couldn't be coming into the race really in better form, coming off that Preakness win. Now, we know it was a dream trip. He had everything work right for him, and that was basically because he had Johnny V aboard. So he gets an A- form-wise only because I'm not so sure he's going to get that same scenario for the Belmont. And more importantly, I don't necessarily think he has to take the lead. He's been rating the majority of his career, and you do have Il Miracolo, who I got a feeling they're going to send. And Johnny V is too smart to get in a pace duel with him, so I think they'll just let him burn out and right behind him, which this horse is more than capable of doing. Class grade, he's a B+. His pedigree says that he's going to get the 1.5 miles. I'm not worried about that. And, we give him a B+ maybe because he hasn't done 1.5 miles before, but with a little room for improvement. But I don't think that's going to be a problem. His pedigree doesn't completely scream Belmont. That's the other reason. Speed grade is an A-. He ran a 98 last time, and his pattern suggests that he's sitting on another big one. And from the Thorograph, he's run 2 4s in a row, and so he can run a 2 or better. And if he does that, that puts him square in the eyes of being a win candidate. Pace grade is a B, only because the pace scenario of the Preakness was obviously ideal, and just not sure he's going to be able to do that again. If he does in the Belmont, he's got a very good chance of winning this race. Even if he's not on the lead, I still think he's a contender to watch in this race, and I think you need to use. Miracolo has no chance in this race. They're going to send him, if anything, on the lead, because what else are they going to do with him? Form grade, he just came off a 1 mile win at the allowance level at Gulfstream. That's not really that great a prep for a 2-turn race at 1.5 miles. Class grade, his pedigree does say that 1.5 miles will be within his wheelhouse, but he's certainly not fast enough. He hasn't demonstrated it. All the graded stakes on the Derby Trail he ran, he was not a factor in any of them. Speed grade, he gets a D because he had a 77 in his last race, and that's about 25 points lower than a winning buyer speed figure for the Belmont. Pace grade C-. Again, the numbers were based upon a 1-turn mile. He will not do that for the Belmont, I guarantee it. And he is an immediate toss and a good candidate for last. Number 6 is FOrte. Form is a B only because he hasn't run in 10 weeks. His form prior going into the Derby from the Florida Derby gave him an A because he was coming in excellent form. But now we have this long layoff to think about, and you do have the vet scratch to consider as well. I think it is a big ask for Todd Pletcher to maintain this horse in top form for 10 weeks. That's really the only issue I have as far as form goes. But this one can fire off the bench. He's proven that, and I think he can run an effort that's competitive in this race. Class grade is an A. He's got from the 1X female family, as we've mentioned, that's Lux Royale. They've got tons of Belmont winners in that family. It's a very classy family, and I think he's stacks up with the best in here. Speed grade is a B+, only because his speed figures prior to the Derby would have given him an A going into the Derby. However, we've had some others run at classic distances since the Florida Derby, and they've registered better numbers. So we have to downgrade a little bit to a B+, but he's still capable, in my opinion, of running a number that's commensurate with a winning score for the Belmont. Pace grade is a B+. He's a mark of consistency. He runs the same race every single time, as we saw in our pace study, and he has the top average and sustained pace. And as we mentioned, usually horses that have lead in both categories for a race usually win it. The 10-week layoff is really the big question, but I think this horse is very competitive in this field, and I think is a win candidate. And if you don't feel that strongly about him, he's an absolute use, and you have to include in your exotic wagers. Number 7 is Hit Show, and he seems to be the now horse that everybody's excited about. And he did run a nice Derby. I'm not taking anything away from him. That was a good race. It was deceptively good because of the hot pace. The problem is he didn't have enough in the tank to close the deal. And that is more symbolic of the fact that he's a little cut below the best in this of the 3-year-old crop. He gets a B+ form grade because he did run a nice Derby. Whether or not he can build on that, that's the question. I'm just not sure he's going to be able to run a race better than that would win this one. Class grade, he gets a B+ because His dam is got plenty of stamina underneath, won the Black-Eyed Susan, and finished in the stakes placed in the Alabama. So that's at 1.25 miles. So distance isn't going to be a problem. I think this one will be fine. But again, B+ because he's just a little bit below the rest of them. It just is. Speed grade, he gets an A- because he ran a big race in the Derby. Just not sure he can duplicate that or build on it. So that's where you get the minus from. Pace grade is a C+ because, as we noted for the Derby, while he did run a very good race, he kind of got eaten up by that hot pace and staying off of it like he did. And consequently, he didn't have enough to finish the deal. Now, in the Belmont, the pace will likely not be that fast unless Il Miracolo just goes banshee on us and they decide to just upset the apple cart by running lights out. I don't think they're going to try to do that. Pace grade-wise, his numbers off the Derby indicate that he's probably not going to have a lot in the tank left to take this race down. That said, he could very well build on the Derby. I'm not ruling that out, but I think even if he runs his best race, it's still a cut below. I think you use him in the exotics. That's the extent of it. I don't see him as a win candidate. Angel of Empire is the logical favorite for this race. He couldn't be coming to the race, in my opinion, in better form. He's class-wise, he's proven he's one of the best 3-year-olds. He keeps getting better as the distances get longer. Speed-wise, he's got the top buyer coming into this race, and there are a lot of indications that he very well may build on that and run a better race than he did in the Derby. Pace grade, he ran a good Derby. He got a really nice third and was still cruising towards the end. Galloped out well. I don't think he's going to have a problem in the 1.5 miles. In fact, I think it's tailor-made for him. To me, he's a total win candidate. And the only question we have, and the reason he got an A- for pace, is if they do slow it down on the front end, that may compromise his chances to a degree. But this horse is just too good not to be considered a win candidate. And he's an absolute use. If you don't believe he's as a win candidate, you can't leave him off your tickets. Red Route 1, he's, as I keep saying, he's ubiquitous. He seems to always be there. Form-wise, he gets a C mainly because they tried something different in the Preakness, trying to get him up closer to the pace, and it really just didn't work out. There was a point in the race I thought he was going to take it over, and he just didn't have enough in the tank to do it. He flattened out. So they're going to go back to making him a come-from-the-clouds closer. That's what he does. He will be up against it because, again, I'm not so sure he's going to have a pace to run to, and that's why he gets a C for form. Class grade, gun runner, Tapit on the bottom, no problem. Belmont, he's just... he's a little bit of a cut below, but his pedigree, he's going to get the distance. I'm not worried about that. Speed-wise, he gets a B because, again, he's a cut below. He hasn't run anything yet to say that he would be a win candidate in this race. Can he be competitive at the speed level? Yes. Is it possible that he's going to make a move forward in this race? Yes. The problem is it's not going to be fast enough. That's really the bottom line to it. Pace grade wise, he's up against it a little bit, and that's why he gets a B-, as we mentioned, because of the pace scenario. However, he can run and he can run in this race, and we know what he's going to do. He's going to come flying up from the behind. It's probably not going to be good enough. He's going to be a day late and $1 short, as he quite often is. So. Do I think that he should be used? Yes. I think he's an absolute use on our tickets. I don't consider him a win candidate. I just think he's a cut below. So here's our final assessment. We're going to use Angel of Empire as our primary win candidate. We're also going to use FOrte and Tapit Trice as win candidates. Red Route 1, we're absolutely using on all our tickets. Now, I separated National Treasure and Hit Show because Hit Show I'm kind of on the fence with whether or not to go to use or not. I think he's on the bottom, if at all. And National Treasure, I think you can use, he has a couple asterisks there because you could use him as a win candidate. I think that's very realistic. but probably more likely to use in the exotics. I think he's sitting on a good race. Angel of Empire will be our primary thrust. Tossing, Tapit Shoes, Arcangelo, and Il Miracolo, all the new shooters. Of the three, I would say Arcangelo probably has the best chance to factor in the race, but everything points to him regressing. Tapit Shoes, I just don't think is good enough, and Il Miracolo, it's just he doesn't belong in this race, period. So that's the way we see, after our assessment, that's the way the field looks to me. Pretty tough, these final assessments sometimes. You know, over the course of the Triple Crown Trail, you get attached to certain horses and you really like them and you become a fan. And that's only logical, but sometimes they don't fit the shape of the race and you have to be cold and hard and analytical and throw them out if they don't fit if you want to be successful. And that's just the way it is. And I know a lot of you have some sentiment about Hit Show. He seems to be a really popular horse, and I just don't see it. You know, I know that's disheartening to hear, but I just, from the analysis, I just don't see it. And I've kind of liked that horse all along. He's really honest. He gives his all every time. I just don't think it's good enough. So take that for what you will. It is an awesome Saturday, 5 grade ones in a row. We've got a posting about the grade 1 pick 5 sequence. Hopefully you've had a chance to take a look at it. If you haven't, maybe it'll help you with your wagering and planning your strategies. I'm going to be at the Belmont on Saturday. So if you do see me, please come up and say hello. I'd love to talk with you, get to know our subscribers. I'm pretty hard to miss. I'm a pretty big guy. So I think you'll spot me. I stick out like a sore thumb. I can't help it. So I'd love to talk to you if you're there. Hopefully we'll meet. If you do like what you see here, of course, please like and subscribe. Just because the Triple Crown Trail is ending, that does not mean we're going to stop with our coverage. We will be very heavily involved with Saratoga. More on that to come later. We'll throw in some Del Mar this summer, and all the major stakes races that occur throughout the summer. We'll be on top of that, and we'll have postings for them. All the way through the Breeders' Cup and the conclusion of the Thoroughbred season at the end of the year. So this will be a source for you for content, and we'll give you some analysis to hopefully help you be right at the wire, and that's what it's all about. I love the way this community is growing. Keep those comments coming, guys. I love to hear from you, and I'll again wish you the best of luck this weekend, and I'll be talking to you in the near future. We'll recap the weekend later on the next week, and we'll continue with our posting. So I'll be talking to you soon, and until then, be well.